All right. It is good to see everybody. How'd you do for the first day? Probably a lot of information was coming your way, but hopefully you had a really good first day. Hopefully you're having a really good second day. The good news is we're almost to the first weekend. Always got to look forward to something. And you're in math class. I mean, what more could you ask for? I think we're going to get along just fine. Okay. So my plan today is I want to go ahead and just review the classroom expectations, the syllabus, the information that we covered yesterday. It's going to go a lot faster, hopefully be a lot less painless, but I also want to give you the opportunity, if you have any questions or you want me to elaborate on something, we can definitely go ahead and do that. And then afterwards, I'll go ahead and start talking about the structure of the new PSAT exam. And then I got a couple of problems for you to take a look at. We'll do a couple together, and then I'll have you try one on your own to finish out the class period. Okay, so that is our plan. All right, so daily classroom expectations. This is what's going to happen as we walk in every day. Let me turn this down. Okay. So today was fantastic. Everybody was on time. I really appreciate that. We found our seats, so great job. Grab any materials provided. So did everybody grab the paper up at the front? Okay, so anything I have up on the front, you'll notice I have the calculators as well, because you're going to be allowed to use the calculators today. So if you didn't happen to grab one, you can go ahead and do that in just a second. Be in your seat and ready to begin when the bell rings. You folks did a great job on that. Appreciate it. That's what we want to do. Right now I'm going through the directions. Ensure the class calculator is back in the charging base before the dismissal bell rings. So in the last like 2 or 3 minutes, I'm going to hopefully make sure that all those calculators are up there so that when the bell rings, I can get you out of here. You can go to lunch. Okay, have as much time as possible. And then we are on the second day of this new law, no electronics. So remember, it not only applies to cell phones, but if you have a smartwatch, you got to take that off. If you've got earbuds, you do have to remove those as well. But are there any questions about the daily classroom expectations? Okay, then let me go ahead and scroll down here. I believe I was on slide 12. So here's the syllabus from yesterday. So I went ahead and talked about a lot of these major points that I wanted you to be familiar with. So first we had absences. Then we went ahead and talked about grading. We don't have a district assessment in here, so we're on the 70-30 plan. 30% for exams, and then we'll have 70% for everything else. Okay. Remember, like an exam or a quiz, if you want to retake it, you below an 80, you want to raise it up to an 80, you just need to have completed and turned in the current assignment that goes with that. Really, we don't have late work in here. I mean, there'll be days I'll say that an assignment is due, and I'll have you turn it in, but if you're not ready to turn it in at that point, there's no penalty for that. Just get it to me as soon as you can. Cheating, we talked about that. Supplies, so you're still allowed in without a badge. Okay, but if you don't have a badge, that means that you're not going to be allowed to go to the restroom. Hey, Emma. Okay, so Emma, I have you sitting right here. So now this week we're not going to worry about that because they're still calling people down. Not only if you don't have a Chromebook, but get your badge as well. So today, if you need to go use the restroom, just let me know. We'll get it taken care of. The kiosk is right over there. Okay. But moving forward into next week, in order to go to the bathroom, yeah, you'll need either your temporary or a permanent badge. What times during the day are we supposed to get those? In the morning and during lunch. There we go. Okay, before school. As far as supplies, pencil, pen, I recommend a binder. I got a hole punch over there because I'm going to give you skeleton notes. But again, you can do this however you'd like. What else do we have here? You are allowed food and drink. Just please clean up after yourselves. Tutoring is going to be every morning from 7:45 to 8:05. I'll open my door at 7:40. But Wednesdays, there's no tutorials before school, just because we have the late start. I do have after-school tutorials on Tuesday and Wednesday, but by appointment only. So just give me a heads up if you'd like to come in on a day and stay. We talked about the cell phones. That's a really good doggy. So I'm going to skirt past that. Here's my contact information if you or your parents would like to get a hold of me. So much faster than yesterday, but are there any questions? Anything you'd like me to elaborate on? Okay. Yes. I don't believe they've called them yet. I think they've gotten through freshmen. They first did freshmen A through H, then they did the rest of the alphabet. And I want to say it was last class period. They said if any freshman has not come down. So unless maybe I didn't hear it, did they call for sophomores yet? Or anybody else? I don't think they have. So they should be coming on pretty quick to go ahead and do that. Okay. Good question. Any other questions? Okay, so that's the syllabus. One other thing I want to go ahead and bring to your attention, of course, is our website here. So remember, I go ahead and post information weekly. You've got this week and next week. Next week's when we're going to do our first official lesson. Okay, exponents and radicals. So you can expect to see this packet when you walk in. We'll have an assignment over it. We'll have a quiz over it next week. In fact, that's already listed right here. It's going to be next Friday. Okay, but are there any questions about the website? Okay. In fact, by the end of today, what you're going to notice on this week, the 11th to the 15th, because this is kind of our first unofficial lesson, I'm just kind of using this as a test to see if I can actually record. There's going to be a link right here that takes you to a video, hopefully, knock on wood, having everything that we discussed. Okay. So we'll see how that works out. So we should be able to come in tomorrow and see that. All right, so that's everything we discussed yesterday. Remember, we had a shorter period because second period was so long, but is there anything that's on somebody's mind? Anything about the class, anything about lunch, or anything maybe I can just possibly help you with? Is there anybody still having trouble with your password, getting that reset? Okay, well then I believe we are ready to go. Okay, so let me go ahead. Oh, I don't believe I have that pulled up yet. Okay, so here we go. So you may already be kind of familiar with how the PSAT is now structured, but if not, I do want to go ahead and kind of just run through. And again, I'll make sure all this information is posted to the website as well. But you've now got two sections. The first section is English, the second section is mathematics, and each section is broken up into two equal length modules. Okay, so we have section 2, module 1 for math, and we got section 2, module 2 for math as well. Remember, I don't know if you recall the old PSAT, the third section, you were not allowed to use a what? Calculator, there we go. But then the other section, you were allowed to go ahead and use a calculator. One new change on this PSAT, you have a calculator through the entire test. Okay? You can use a calculator whenever you see fit. Now, depending on where you are on Lubbock High, if you're a junior, we go ahead and provide calculators. For sophomores, unfortunately, we don't have enough to do that, but we do have access to Desmos. How many people are familiar with Desmos? Okay, good. In fact, I want to say it's in October. I want to say October 22nd off the top of my head is when the PSAT is going to roll around. So it's really not until you're a junior that that's super important. So the fact that we only have, a few handful of weeks before you take the PSAT, don't let that worry you. In fact, maybe we'll even get some strategies and tips in before then to kind of increase your score for this year. Let's see how that plays out. Now, we're talking about the math. When you switch over to Mr. Schmidt on September 2nd, he's going to go ahead and talk to you about the English. So I'm only going to go ahead and do the math. On each of the two modules, there's 22 questions. Okay, and you're going to have 44 total, but each module is 35 minutes. So you'll have 35 minutes. So if you go ahead and break it down mathematically, just working at a constant rate, I want to say that's about 1.59 minutes per problem. But I'm going to go ahead and talk about strategies because do you think there's going to be problems you're going to spend more time on versus others? Absolutely. Okay. So as we go through, we've already talked about the time. Okay, you're going to be allowed a calculator on each one of these. It says approximately 3/4 of the math questions use the 4-option multiple choice format. So most of it's going to be multiple choice, but there will be a handful of what we call SPR, student produced responses. Basically, those are fill in the blank. Okay, those are open-ended, but we have to go ahead and determine a strategy and figure out a value. Okay, so here's the breakdown. So algebra, you can expect that to be about 35% of the exam. It's going to cover between 13 and 15 questions. And these are all the different kinds of concepts you could look at. We have advanced math. Expect that to be about 32.5%. That'll be about 12 to 14 questions. So you'll already notice right here, okay, 35 and 32.5. Okay, that's 67.5. That's already the majority is going to be covering algebra and advanced math. Okay, if we come on down here, problem solving and data analysis, consider that about 20%. You'll have about 7 to 9 questions. But here's the thing on this. In the past couple of years, they've really started to increase the number of statistic problems on there. Now, it's not going to go too terribly far. Originally, you'd probably have something like a scatter plot. Does anybody know what I'm referring to when I say that? Just a collection of points in a plane. You know, it might look like this. And then you're asked about maybe a trend line that goes through what we call a line of best fit. So a scatter plot, that's part of what we refer to when we say data analysis or interpreting information from a graph. But they are going to go ahead and push it forward. They're going to go ahead and bring in more statistical ideas like measures of central tendency. So you may not recognize that phrase, but you'll definitely recognize what I say that follows. So first off, does anybody know what I'm referring to when I say a measure of central tendency? Kind of, sort of. Okay. So we're talking about mean, median, and what? What's that third M? Mode. There we go. So that's something you're already familiar with. The mean, of course, is the average of your elements. What's the median? No, that's the mean. The middle. So the median is the middle number if you go ahead and take your elements and put them in ascending order. Okay, we'll figure out the middle is, and we're going to talk about all this. And then the mode is the element or number that appears the what? The most. Okay. And then what they've also done in recent years, they also have started to put problems on there about standard deviation. Now, there's good news and there's bad news. Okay, so the good news is you don't have to calculate the standard deviation. Okay, you're not going to have to use the formula. You're not going to have to do anything like that. Okay, the bad news is you have to understand enough about standard deviation in order to answer the problem. Is there anybody in here who's already familiar with standard deviation? If not, that's okay. We are going to talk about it at some point. I won't get into it right now because we've got a whole lesson created on that. Okay, and then as we go ahead and move down, here's a further breakdown. Hello. Okay, were you here yesterday? Okay, come on, come on. And chinchilla. Hustle, but your name is Hustle. Yes, I was trying to remember anything I could about your name. Yes, sir. You're right here. Okay. So right now we're just currently kind of going through a breakdown of the new PSAT. Okay, so what other problems can we expect? Geometry and trigonometry. That's going to account for about 12.5%. That's going to be 4 to 6 questions. So geometry, it could be something, you know, maybe surface area, it could be volume of a prism, something that basic. It'll probably include something with right triangles, have something to do with similarity. Does that word sound familiar? Okay. All of these we're going to go ahead and refresh and talk about again as we go through the course. But now, here's one you may not be as familiar with. What am I talking about when I say trigonometry? Emma? SOHCAHTOA, that's exactly right. So we're talking about sine, cosine, and tangent. Again, good news about the PSAT, if there's going to be a trigonometric problem, it's only going to cover SOHCAHTOA. It won't go any further than that. So hopefully they're going to be pretty basic questions. You could even expect maybe to have a complex question on there. Does anybody recognize the imaginary number I? Okay. So if you were to take the square root of, let's say, 36, what is that? 6. Why? Yeah, because you're looking for what we define as the perfect square. A number times itself that gives you this radicand right here. So what if I were to ask you, okay, I want you to simplify the square root of a negative 36. Now, see, here's the thing. Unfortunately, we can't do that. So we got to find a way to kind of get around this problem. So we go ahead and define the square root of negative 1 as this variable I. Okay. So we go ahead and essentially rewrite what we have under the radical. So the square root of negative 36, that's going to be 36 times negative 1. Now, what's the square root of 36? Yeah, you just told me that. 6 times 6, right? Okay. But now we have to figure out by definition, what do we call the square root of negative 1? I. So we just go ahead and say that's 6I. See, the negative is still there. There's no way to get a negative 36 without multiplying a positive times a negative. But it's not the same number. Does that look familiar at all? That's what I'm talking about when we say complex. We call that the imaginary unit. Does that sound familiar? No? That's okay. We're going to talk about it. Okay? So I guess we could say the I's have it. The I's have it. Imaginary. Oh, that joke probably was a little corny. Cornea in your eye. Yeah, we're going to get along just fine. It's going to be fantastic. Okay. All right. You'll laugh later. Okay. All right. So I just want to make sure that I got all this. Okay. So we got those parts there. We talked about all of those. Fantastic. Okay. So now we're to the sheet that you picked up on the way in. Just some general strategies. And really, it's not just for the PSAT and the SAT. And in fact, because this is, early in the course, if you see something, and we're talking specifically about the SAT, and you're like, wait a minute, this is a PSAT course. That's okay, because you take the PSAT in order to prepare you for what? The SAT. Okay, so if we are talking about the SAT, well, that already covers everything in the PSAT as well. So don't even let that bother you. Okay. Now, it's not only for these tests. I mean, really, these strategies can apply to a lot of different things that you're going to be doing with different tests. Okay, read the section directions before the test. Answer the questions you know. In mathematics, we love our acronyms. Okay, I've got this acronym here, POOD. We always say, remember your POOD. What am I talking about? You might know what POOD stands for? It's okay. Maybe we can get it as we go along. Personal order of, what do you think that D is? What's that? Damages? Dimensions. Oh, good word. Not what I'm looking for, though. Difficulties. Difficulties. There we go. Personal order of difficulty. Okay, so what do you think that means? Okay. So let me put this scenario to you. Let's say you sit down in October. You're given the PSAT. You're already in one of the math modules. Okay. And you go ahead and come to a problem. Is it okay to spend as much time on that problem as you need to? I would say no. Remember, each module has how many questions? 22 questions. You have how long for 22 questions? 35 minutes. What I always tell students is that you want to trust yourself. Okay? You're prepared, you put in the time, your teacher's got you ready. You want to be able to work at an uncomfortable pace. Trust your first instinct. Okay? So what POOD means is that if you're going to start with number 1, students have things they do all the time. I've come across students who they consider it good luck. They start with the very last question and they work backwards. Some students are determined they're going to start with number 1 and they're going to work through every single problem. But POOD, let's say you're working through, you come to a problem that maybe you don't understand what it's asking. Or maybe if you do understand what it's asking, you're thinking, this is going to take me some time because I'm going to have to do some calculations. Okay? So either it's going to take a lot of time, maybe you don't understand the question, skip it. Only work those problems that you feel most comfortable with. Okay? By the time you get to the end of the test, you're going to have a good number of questions that you feel good, that you feel are correct. Now's the time to go back and spend additional time on those problems that we're going to give you a little more difficulty. That's what POOD stands for, personal order of difficulty. Okay. And in fact, years ago, it used to be that if you got an answer wrong, that you got a reduction in points. What happens now? There's no deduction. There is no penalty for a wrong answer. So guaranteed on the multiple choice, what should you always do? Yeah, if you've exhausted every idea, or maybe you don't know how to do it, at the very least, you got a 1 in 4 probability. Make your best guess. That's still a strategy. Make sure all your multiple choice answers are answered. What if it's open-ended? Is there a penalty for a wrong answer? No. So that makes it a little more difficult. Unfortunately, you can't just choose one of the answers represented, but try to come up with something reasonable. What's a value that could work in the problem that they're giving you? Always answer everything. It's to your advantage because you never know. You might get it right. Okay. Eliminate incorrect answers. We're going to use a process called POE, P-O-E, process of elimination. Anytime you can eliminate one answer or more, that gets you closer to what you're looking for in the answer. Because instead of a 1 in 4, a 25% probability, if you eliminate one answer, you've already gone from 25% to 33.3. Now you've got a 1 in 3 probability. You've already increased your odds of getting that question right. Okay. Be neat. Now this really doesn't apply anymore because the test is what? Digital, but you'll still have scratch paper that you do have to turn in because College Board likes to take a look at all that stuff. Use your test booklet if you happen to have one of those. Avoid stray marks. See, those don't apply so much right now. Your first response is usually correct. Now, if you do have time at the end of the test, I would encourage you, go back, just kind of go through. But don't go through in order to second guess yourself. Just kind of go through the problem. Are the same ideas as when you first went through the problem, are they popping in your head? Okay. But you don't want to go back and think, oh, what if I had done that? Okay. Go with your first instinct. Okay. Don't skip answers. Guess, we just talked about that. Okay. Pay attention, budget your time. You know now that on your Chromebooks, there's going to be that countdown timer right there in front of you. So you're going to know exactly how much time you're going to have left. Okay. Part of POOD, get the easy questions first. Make sure you understand the question. Okay. If you're given one of those big word problems, those paragraph questions, my suggestion is read the last sentence first. Why is that? Because what's that last sentence going to be? That's the question. It's going to give you all this information and then say, now, do this, or what is this? So if you already go in reading the problem, knowing what they want you to look for, again, you've already increased your chances of doing better on that problem. Okay. Is it possible that they'll give you information that you don't need? Absolutely. And this is something we're going to talk about. I don't like the College Board does this, but I'm going to talk about this every chance I get. Will they try to trick you? Yes. Okay. Especially when it comes to the multiple choice questions, a lot of times, not every time, but they are going to put certain answers, certain values that they know students are going to come across when they start doing calculations. And what makes you feel better on a multiple choice test than you do a little bit of math, you come up with a number and you see that number on your test. That makes you feel pretty good, right? Makes you feel like you're on the right track. They take advantage of it. Be careful. Make sure you know what they're wanting you to answer. Okay. Let's see. We used to have gridables. Now it's just fill in the blank, so we don't have to worry about that anymore. Okay. All right. Let's start looking at some problems. I know this is what you were waiting on. You're like, man, I haven't had any math since May. I want to do something. Okay, I got you. All right, here we go. I think everybody's here now, so I don't have to put one aside. Okay, so let me go ahead and turn off the lights so they actually see what we're looking at here. So it says a landscaper is designing a rectangular fountain with a 4-foot wide path around it. The equation A equals 4P plus 64 will relate the area A in square feet of the path to the perimeter P in feet of the fountain. In the design, how many feet will the perimeter of the fountain increase for each additional square foot of the path's area? Yeah, absolutely. Did I only pass out two? I'm sorry about that. It's my fault. Now, one thing, if they never have a picture, I always like to say, go ahead and draw yourself a picture. On this one, I don't think it's necessary, but what kind of fountain are we talking about? Okay, we're talking about a rectangular fountain. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and draw just a rectangle. Okay, and what else do we know? We're going to have a 4-foot wide path around it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put this path around it. Kind of think of it like a picture frame. So the width of this path, this is going to be 4 all the way around. Okay. So you okay with that? Now the question is, in the design, how many feet will the perimeter of the fountain increase for each additional square foot of the path's area? There's a lot of different ways to do this, and that's the trick about PSAT. There's not just one way. Okay, so a lot of times I'm going to want to work a problem through different ways because it really depends on your perspective. But I'm also wanting to go ahead and incorporate strategies and tips and tricks that we're talking about. Because, yeah, it'd be great in a perfect world. We want you to be able to do this mathematically and have that understanding. That's great, okay? But we also want you to pass what? We want you to be able to pass the PSAT. We want you to be able to get a score that you're going to be happy with. Okay? So let's think about it like this. Okay? They're giving me 4P plus 64. Now, what does that represent? That represents the perimeter, which helps me establish what? What's that giant A? The area. One of the best strategies you could do on problems like this is go ahead and choose a value and plug it into the scenario. Okay, so let's say I have this perimeter right here. Let's say 4P plus 64. Okay, so let's go ahead and set this equal to an easy to work with area. Let's say 100. Okay. Now, given an area of 100, a number that I just made up, I could use whatever I want. Okay, let's go ahead and solve for the perimeter. Walk me through this. How would I do that? How can I first isolate 4P? Yeah, so I'm going to subtract 64. Remember, this is just solving an equation. Okay, so opposites are going to cancel. 100 minus 64, 36. That equals 4P. I don't want 4P, I want P. What do? We divide. The opposite of multiplication is division. In fact, that's why I have these glasses on, because they help me with division. Division. Get it? There you go. You'll laugh later. It's okay. All right, so what's the perimeter? So the perimeter is 9 feet. Now, why is this important? I mean, why would we do that? Okay. Well, the problem is trying to figure out, how does the perimeter change if I do what to the area? If the perimeter, how's it changing if we increase the area by 1 square foot? Okay. Well, we chose 100. What's going to happen if I increase that by 1 more foot? What do I now have? So I started with 100 square feet, but I'm going to add an additional square foot. So 101. So 101 is equal to 4P plus 64. Now let's do the exact same thing. Let's solve for P. So if I subtract the 64 over, okay, 101 minus 64, that's a 37 this time. So 37 is equal to 4P. Opposites are going to cancel. Okay. We still have to divide by what? Divide by 4. Now, this isn't going to go in evenly. Okay? But we know that 4 will evenly divide 36. So we know that 4 goes in there 9 times with what remainder? So we put the remainder over the divisor. So even if you were to put this in the calculator, we're saying that the perimeter is going to be 9.25 feet. Okay. Well, see, I changed the area based on what they told me. How did the perimeter change? It increased by 1/4. So many times, problems that you think are going to be super challenging or difficult, if you see the little trick, you can make the problem so much easier. Remember, that's not the only way you can work this particular problem. Yeah, you can do it algebraically. Okay, let's try another. How about this one? It says triangle ABC above is isosceles. So remember, vocabulary is going to be super, super important. What does that mean, isosceles? Two sides are congruent. There we go. So we know that AB, so the length of AB right here is equal to AC. See, if I remember from geometry, I'm going to put those little tick marks to kind of indicate that they have the same length. Now it says, we also know that BC is equal to 48. So that full length of the base is equal to 48. Now the ratio of DE to DF is 5:7. So if they give it to you like this, the fact that they wrote it as a colon, that's just another way of showing a ratio, a fraction. Okay. So they could have easily just said the ratio of DE to DF is 5 divided by 7. Okay. So don't let that colon affect you at all. Now, given this information, what's the length of segment DC? So I want to know this length right here. Okay. And we've got 4 possible answers. Now we're going to go ahead and use a strategy that I didn't talk about previously. It's what we call test the test. Okay, we're going to call test a test. Now what this means is, while we could do mathematics to go ahead and figure out the answer, we're going to use the answers to help me figure out which one is correct. Okay. Now, I do want to go ahead and give you about a minute. Try this one on your own. See if you can come up with any way. But I'm already going to give you an idea about how I'm going to do it. I'm going to use the answers to help me. Okay. So where is my timer here? In fact, we get out of here at 50. Well, let me give you 2 minutes. Okay. Let's see if you can come up with the answer for this. So DC is either 12, 20, 24, or 28 units long. We got to figure out which one. About 40 seconds. And remember, if you're not sure, we already talked about that. Okay, at the very least, you got 4 answers. You got a 1 in 4 probability. Make your best guess. Okay. right. Let's go ahead and take a look. It doesn't outright mention it, but because it says the ratio of DE to DF is 5/7, and we have certain information here in the diagram, what are we actually talking about here? What mathematical concept? What do we call it if we're comparing two shapes that are exactly the same shape, but they're different sizes? It starts with an S. Mathematically, we say all corresponding angles are congruent. All the corresponding side lengths are proportional. Does this sound familiar? What's that? They're similar. We're talking about similarity. Yes. Does that sound familiar? Okay, so let's take a look at these two base triangles that we have. Because it's isosceles, I know that the base angles have to be congruent. So I know that angle B would already correspond to angle C, simply because they told me this, that it was isosceles. So in those two smaller triangles, do we know anything else about them? They both have what kind of angle? They both have right angles. So this right angle is going to be the same as this right angle right here. Okay. Now, if you add the three angles of a triangle, it's always going to give you the same sum. What is that? 180. Well, if these two triangles have two different pairs of angles, what's that telling me about these two little angles here that are left? EDB and FDC. What about those two angles? What do we know about them? They would have to be congruent as well. So this is one of those postulates. Remember angle, angle, angle? Do you remember in geometry when you went through all those fun acronyms, SSS, SAS, side angle, side, all that good stuff? Okay. This is what it's referring to. So now that I know these two triangles are similar, I could use that to answer the question. Okay. But it's one of those things you'd have to not only recognize what it's talking about, but then you'd have to remember how to go ahead and do that. Okay. And if you can, fantastic. If you want me to, we'll take a look at it in just a second. But I said we were going to test the test. Okay. So let's see. Let's just start with A and run through. Let's say I believe that A is the right answer. So if DC is 12, okay, but I know that the full length of the base is 48, what's that make AD, or excuse me, BD? That means it would be 36. Okay. So here's the thing. It says the ratio of DE, see DE is in the first triangle, while DF is in the second triangle, right? So we want to go from side length here to this. Well, those two are going to be proportional to each other. So if I go ahead and create the ratio, I'm looking for the answer that's going to give me the ratio from the problem. So let's see. Will 36/12, will that simplify down to a 5/7? No. Okay. So that means A is not the answer. Does that make sense? Anybody think they know what the answer is? Oh, I heard somebody say it. Say it again. It is D. Okay, let's take a look. Let's say DC right here is 28. Okay. Well, if that segment is 28, what would BD have to be? It would have to be 20. Because remember, these two segments have to add to give you 48. So I'm going from the first triangle to the second. Will 20 over 28 give me 5/7? Yeah, because they're both divisible by what? 4. That's what we want to do in this course. I mean, a lot of times, yeah, we'll go ahead and take the time to run through things algebraically because I want to help you build your algebra skills, but I also want you to feel comfortable using these little strategies that we come up with because we want you to do better on the PSAT. Okay, so here's how we're going to end for today. You've got this problem here, so let me go ahead and read through it very quickly. It's got 3 equations provided: speed time, and position speed. An arrow is launched upward with an initial speed of 100 meters per second. The equations above describe the constant acceleration motion of the arrow, where v naught, so if you ever have a subscript 0, we refer to that as naught in mathematics. So v naught is the initial speed of the arrow, v is the speed of the arrow as it's moving up in the air, and h is the height of the arrow above the ground. T is the time elapsed since the arrow was projected upward, and g is the acceleration due to gravity, 9.8 meters per second squared. A lot of information there for you. Okay, here are the two questions. What is the maximum height from the ground the arrow will rise to the nearest meter? And how long will it take for the arrow to reach its maximum height to the nearest tenth of a second? Now, we're talking about a quadratic, right? Let's see what we remember. Whenever you see the words maximum or minimum, what part of a quadratic am I talking about specifically? Like this one here, we're talking about an arrow that's going to be launched, so it's going to follow a parabolic path before it hits the ground. And it keeps referring to this maximum. What is it talking about algebraically? What letter am I from? A V? Is there anything associated with a V on a parabola? What's that? Someone said something. Velocity? That's a good V word, but not the one I'm looking for. The vertex. Whenever you're dealing with a quadratic and they make reference to a maximum or a minimum, they're referring to your vertex. Okay? So we're trying to figure out two things here. What's the maximum height from the ground the arrow's going to rise? So I need to know this distance right here. How high off the ground is it going to be? But also, how long, how many seconds are going to pass in order for it to reach its maximum height? Okay, so I'm already going to go ahead and give you some hints here. Okay, these are how your coordinates are going to be for your quadratic. Normally we have an x and a y. Here we're talking about time and height. So the height of the arrow depends on how much time has passed. Okay, so I've given you this right here. If you were to find the vertex, you have the answer to both of the questions you're looking for. Does this look familiar to anybody? The opposite of b over 2a, and then f of opposite of b over 2a? Okay. If not, that's okay. Don't panic. Okay, I'm going to help you out with this, but I want you to try this on your own. You remember how I said also they're going to go ahead and give you information that you don't need? Okay. There's a couple of equations up here. You can use them, but it's not necessary. I would go ahead and focus on this position time equation. Complete the equation with the information that they're giving you in the problem. Okay. Like, for example, the initial speed is what? The arrow's launched with an initial speed of 100. What represents initial speed? What variable? V naught. So see, I already know the value of V naught. I would replace that with 100. Okay. This is what I'd like you to take a look at tonight. Tomorrow you'll bring it back. We'll go ahead and finish up this problem. I'll go ahead and talk through this vertex a little more. Now, if you can go ahead and do it on your own, that's fantastic. If you feel like this might be a little too challenging, don't worry. We're going to go ahead and take care of this first one together. But please make sure to bring this back, because this right here, you're going to turn it in tomorrow. That's going to be our first grade. Okay. So if you're able to get it on your own, fantastic, but we're going to talk about it, so don't panic. Yes? Do I have paper towels? That's a good question. I don't believe I have any paper towels, but I got plenty of Kleenex, if that'll help. Okay. Why, what happened? Oh, yeah, maybe start just grabbing a bunch of Kleenex, because I don't think we have time. Yeah, we're about to dismiss for lunch. Okay.